strategies. The FFL-CIO is one version, and they are now joined by Robert Kuttner. Robert Kuttner is a fixture in the left liberal world. This is the American Prospect. He has access to The Nation and groups like this. He's you can see him together with the various Boros sages and Katrina vanden Heuvels of the world. But he's now proposing a more robust version. It looks like he's interested in making it somewhat bigger. I'm not sure he says exactly how much it should be, a very small tax, and that this could be on, it would be a universal financial transaction tax. Now, he estimates hundreds of billions of dollars per year, and I think that's certainly true, but it's a lowball estimate. If we estimate total U.S. financial turnover, including derivatives, as somewhere between 1 quadrillion and 2 quadrillion per year, and I tend towards 2 quadrillion perhaps up, then if it's a 1% Tobin tax, that's going to get you 20 trillion of income. On 2 quadrillion, you get 20 trillion. 10 trillion for the feds, 10 trillion for the states. Now, that wouldn't last forever. That would tend to diminish as the life went out of the booze for the speculators, as speculation became less attractive, but it would continue to bring in substantial amounts. Kuttner talks about it from the point of view of a tax that could do a great deal for the hard-pressed deficits of the federal and state governments, and also it would provide what is totally absent today, progressive populism. He says, yes, indeed, progressive populism, some way to strike back against the monstrous excesses, crimes, arrogance, and looting by Wall Street. The Democratic administration today shovels trillions, 24 trillion, Kuttner, trillions to Wall Street under the leadership of Geithner, Summers, and Barkey Obama, the Wall Street puppet. So therefore, the Tobin tax. And he quotes, of course, Adair Turner, the head of the British Financial Services Authority, interested in the idea, and in the German election campaign, which is now heading towards its culmination next Sunday, Sunday the 27th, Germany votes. Looks like Merkel will win, but the finance minister, Per Steinbrück, this is the finance minister of Germany, SPD, called for a Tobin tax. The French government has called for a Tobin tax. Watch out. They're talking about a Tobin tax on financial transactions that would flow into some IMF, International Monetary Fund, or World Bank coffer that would be used to bail out bankrupt investments in the third world, the London Club, Paris Club debt towards sub-Saharan Africa. Forget about that. Those countries get a debt moratorium. That stuff is canceled, written off, no pay. We need the Tobin tax here as a means of national policy, of national strength, of building up the power of the United States and other countries to fight the world economic depression. And the only way you fight depression is to cut the power of the finance oligarchs down to size. Where you're going to start? Here's a good place to start. And I appeal to all libertarians, right-wingers, if you don't want to be flayed alive by Wall Street, here's your chance. If you're a Tea Party protester, this is the ticket for you. And you don't like it because it's a tax? Well, get real. There are going to be taxes. The only question with taxation is who's going to pay? Which social groups? Get some class consciousness. Get wise. Don't be a sucker. Don't be a easy mark for Wall Street. And these bankers, they're talking about shared sacrifice. We've also got then this, even the tactic. The tactic has emerged from a number of conference calls, but the tactic has also been endorsed on the air by this guy Norman Goldman. He calls himself Norman Goldman. You might have heard him. He came on this week to replace Ed Schultz, unfortunately, the principal left-wing talk radio honcho, right now operating from Rockefeller Plaza. So essentially an Obama acolyte, Ed Schultz, has got Norman Goldman in as his replacement, and Norman Goldman polemicizing with the Tea Party protesters said to them, why go to Washington? Why don't you march on Wall Street? So I say to Norman Goldman, great, Norman, why don't you put your money where your mouth is and support a march on Goldman Sachs? But again, not just that we don't like Goldman Sachs and Goldman Sachs is bad. This is widely known. What are you going to do about it? What's the program? What's the agitational thrust? 1% Tobin tax on all the trades that Goldman Sachs makes, and not just them, but Citibank and J.P. Morgan Chase. These are the people who stole $700 billion from you in the bailout. And I'm talking bailout, not stimulus. Stimulus is a mixed bag. A lot, about, half of it probably okay, or maybe 1/3 or 40%. But when it gets to the bailout is totally wrong, totally to be rejected. It's in the same category with cap and trade, cap and tax. But in this case, the bailout, we're now getting the first anniversary of the bailout, which emerged from that awful conspiratorial meeting in Geithner's office with Paulson, with Pandit the Bandit of Citibank, with Diamond of Chase, J.P. Morgan Chase, with Ken Lewis of Bank of America, with Thane of Merrill Lynch, with Mack of Morgan Stanley, with others, Bank of New York Mellon, largest custodial trust bank in the world with almost $30 trillion under management. They were there, too. That's one of the hearts of the establishment. Wells Fargo also involved. That was a conspiratorial meeting, and out of that came the idea that the taxpayer should pay for the derivatives bubble. And, of course, it does not work. The derivatives bubble cannot be maintained. So there is a thrust. The Tea Party people would be well advised to take this under consideration. I doubt they will because they've fallen under the control of desperate Republican demagogues. We'll be back in a minute.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So we're talking a march on Goldman Sachs to impose a 1% Tobin tax to make the Wall Street hyenas pay, and indeed pay the cost of the depression which they have created. If there's a worry about how to finance health care reform, the Tobin tax is one obvious part of the mix. Again, I can't promise that it would be $20 trillion every year, but in the first year, it would probably be something in that neighborhood, perhaps more. The big thing is apply it to all derivatives, exchange-traded and over-the-counter, right? The structured notes, designer notes, whatever they have, and you will begin to turn the entire thing around. The other aspect of this is, since Wall Street speculation is the only thing that is not taxed in a world in which everything else is overtaxed, this amounts to favored treatment. It's an encouragement. It's basically a subsidy for what you don't want. You're subsidizing speculation, which is destructive to society. Why not turn that around? You should tax what you don't want and subsidize what you do want. And what you do want would be health care, but, of course, health care depends on production. You'd have to build 1,000 hospitals and train 250,000 doctors if you want to have health care over the next decade. There are some anti-war protests here. The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, they're going with October 2009, a month of anti-war protests as a result of the 8th anniversary of the lunatic invasion of Afghanistan by Mad Dog Bush in the wake of 9/11. And they're going with October 17th as a day of mass rallies, marches, coordinated local and regional demonstrations. Now, this may be isolated, but at least it has the elementary sanity of picking a Saturday, October 17th, a day when people might be able to come to it, rather than some of these other demos, which are put on days like the 5th and 6th of October, which are Monday and Tuesday, when you can be damn sure that nobody will be able to come. So look at these Tea Party people. They had the good sense to put it on a Saturday. They wanted somebody to show up. So WILPF, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. That's at least minimum requirements of sanity going on. And otherwise, Tuesday, October 7th, if that's correct. Sorry, they've got it wrong. It's Tuesday, October 6th. So you get the idea. Look on the Internet and figure out what's the one that you can go to. And this, of course, is specifically anti-Obama. Now, the teabag protests, the Tea Party protests here in Washington, my estimate is 75,000. The way you can do the estimate is you look at this area in front of the Capitol. You're talking the west front of the Capitol, where the inaugurations, among other things, take place. We had a 9/11 action there as part of a peace demonstration about 2 years ago. 75,000 basically fills the area up to the Grant statue